Hey everyone, it's Boogeyman Ben. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a good day. Today's video that I want to do is something a little bit different because it is not related to anything in the horror genre, which is what this channel is known for. But I've only done this a couple other times, and sometimes I just like to change it up and do something a little bit different. But today's video is going to be about a movie series that I was a huge fan of as a child growing up. It starred an actor that has always been one of my favorite actors, and even though his work has kind of, as he gone further into his career, his work has not been as memorable as the stuff he did when he was younger, but I'm still a fan of his, and I still look forward to anything new that he does, and I will always go see his movies. But the movie series I'm talking about is the Beverly Hills Cop series. Now, I've done this with the Die Hard series, and I've done this with the Expendables. Those are like the exceptions I've made to talking about things that are outside of horror. But just something just got me thinking about this, and I wanted to talk about the series and talk about each film in the series, and also talk about the future prospects for the series, things that have been coming up in the last couple months that suggest that there will be another film of Part 4 finally after nearly 19 years. So again, like I said, something a little bit different for this channel, but I am going to talk about the Beverly Hills Cop series. I will give my thoughts on all three films, including cast, directors, scores, everything, because it is one of my favorite film series of all time, and I invite everybody to check it out. So I hope everyone enjoys this, and please stay tuned. So before I start talking about the movies, I wanted to show off this little Matchbox Hot Wheels car that my wife found it for me when we went to Fry's the other day, and it is the '68 blue Chevy Nova that Eddie Murphy drives in the first Beverly Hills Cop film. And I just thought this was a neat little collectible. It was only $4.99, which was pretty cool, and I'm going to keep it sealed, and I have it hanging here in the room. But yeah, it was just a neat little thing that I found, so I was really happy to find this. One thing I wanted to show off as well is this. It is an autograph picture by Eddie Murphy. There's a certificate of authenticity right there. Now, fortunately, I didn't get to meet Eddie Murphy. I probably would have passed out if I had. But I got this picture in 1998. It's at Harrah's South Lake Tahoe Gallery of Legends, which I don't think is there anymore. But I bought this picture. I believe it was quite expensive. I think it was over $100. But when I saw it, I was up there with my buddies, and I saw this picture, I was like, I have to get it. So yeah, I mean, it's a price thing, and I've seen his autograph before, and it does look like that. So this is Eddie Murphy's autograph, and I'm very happy that I have it, and hopefully one day maybe I'll get to meet the man. But yeah, very happy that I have this. And it's also one of the coolest scenes in Beverly Hills Cop 2. So now this DVD set came out in, I believe it was early 2002, if I'm not mistaken. None of the films had been on DVD at that point, and they put out a box set. You could buy all the films individually, or you could buy the complete lineup. And I remember I wanted this set so bad. I had a friend of mine named George Cook, who was a friend of mine at work. We worked at a company together, and he kept telling me every day. I was checking to make sure this was still being released at the beginning of the month, and I think it was beginning or middle of the month. It was in January or February of 2002, and he kept telling me that it was getting pushed back, and I remember it was driving me crazy, and I would check every time he would say it. But yeah, the movie came out, and I remember I took the day off from work, and I bought this. I got up, and I think I drove to Best Buy in my pajamas, or in my sweats, and bought this and spent the whole day just watching all three films. It was just one of the coolest experiences to have all three on DVD, because at that point I just had them on video cassette. But yeah, I was a huge fan of this, and I still have my video cassette collection. I just don't have it readily available, or I would show it off. But yeah, just was so excited to get this set. So Beverly Hills Cop was released on December 5th, 1984. It was written by Danilo Bach and Daniel Petrie Jr., and it was directed by Martin Brest. The film stars the amazing, the great Eddie Murphy as Detective Axel Foley. You have Judge Reinhold as Billy Rosewood. You have John Ashton as John Taggart. You have Ronnie Cox as Lieutenant Andrew Bogomil. You have Lisa Eilbacher as Jenny Summers, Bronson Pinchot as Serge, and Stephen Burkhoff as Victor Maitland. So the plot of Beverly Hills Cop is it deals with Detective Axel Foley, who is a Detroit cop, and he's one of those guys that just doesn't play by the rules. At the beginning of the film, he has this bust that goes completely wrong and causes all kinds of mayhem and damage and things like that, and he's reprimanded by his captain. And upon returning home that night, he finds out that his buddy from when they were kids has broken into his apartment, and he thinks it's a burglar, and then he finds out it's his buddy Mikey Tandino. And you can tell right away that they're best buddies, and what he finds out is that Mikey had worked in Beverly Hills as a security guard for this warehouse, and he had all these barabons with him. And they go out and they have, drinks and hang out. And upon returning to Foley's house or apartment, they're apprehended by Zack. Zack knocks Foley unconscious, and they kill Mikey because of what he's done by stealing the bonds and everything. So the rest of the movie deals with Foley going against his captain's wishes to stay out of the whole thing, and he travels to the city of Beverly Hills to track down his best friend's killer. Now, I was about 10 or 11 years, I think I was 10 years old the first time I saw Beverly Hills Cop. I had never seen a movie like it, and it was, there's a lot of bad language in that film, and I just thought it was the greatest. But I remember it was my mom, my buddy Tori, and his mom Louise. We all went and saw it, and I thought it was and I still think it's one of the coolest movies ever made. Eddie Murphy is just on fire in this film as Axel Foley. He's always been my favorite character that Eddie Murphy has ever played. I just love Axel Foley. When I was a kid, I tried to be like Axel Foley. I tried to talk fast and be funny. And, it was usually just taking quotes from the movie, but I just love this movie so much. There's so many great things about this film. The direction by Martin Brest is just amazing. I love the opening shot showing Detroit and how they go through the neighborhoods and everything. And it's just amazing the way that the whole opening just really sets up the city of Detroit and where it was, even at that time in the 80s. And as soon as frame one, as soon that Foley is trying to get these guys on at the beginning goes wrong, and they steal that truck and are driving it through the city of Detroit, you just know you're in for a ride. It's just an amazing opening to a film. And then you have a great supporting cast. Judge Reinhold and John Astin are just amazing. They're like the Laurel and Hardy of this film. They're just so funny, and just they're such polar opposites of who Foley is. I mean, Taggart and Rosewood are just so funny. And you also have the great Ronnie Cox as Bogomil. I love him in this. And Lisa Eilbacher is great as Jenny. And what's funny is, and one of the special features on this was, the whole thing is that, and a lot of people should know this, is that this movie was originally meant for Stallone. And Sylvester Stallone was going to do this movie, and Lisa Eilbacher's character, Jenny, was supposed to be his love interest. But then when Stallone wanted it to be, he wanted it to not have the name of Axel Foley, but instead of be Axel Cobretti. So obviously, Stallone in later years would do Cobra, and Cobra is more what his version of Beverly Hills Cop would have been. And when he backed out, they kind of just made Jenny a friend of Foley's. I guess because, the times are, not a lot of interracial relationships in movies back in the 80s, unfortunately, but just a great, great film. I mean, even besides the direction, the writing, and the acting, there's so many other things to love about this film. The other main thing is the music. Harold Faltermeyer, I love his score, the Axel Foley score. I mean, or the Axel Foley theme. Who doesn't like that theme? And also you had Glenn Frey doing the famous "The Heat Is On," which is what opens the movie as they're panning through downtown or through the city of Detroit, which is an amazing opening. You also have like the Pointer Sisters, Patti LaBelle. Just an amazing, amazing soundtrack to this film. So yeah, Beverly Hills Cop is easily a 10 out of 10. I mean, just one of the best movies ever. One of my favorite films of all time. Can't say enough good things about this film. It still holds up today. I still love watching it. Everything about this film is great. The performances, the music, the acting, everything. The direction, the writing. Just a terrific film. And if you haven't seen Beverly Hills Cop, what the hell are you waiting for? Go out and check it out. Three years after Beverly Hills Cop became a juggernaut at the box office, not only in the States but also abroad, we would see the character return in Beverly Hills Cop 2, which was released on May 20th, 1987. This film was directed by Tony Scott, who had just come off of Top Gun. It was again produced by Bruckheimer and Simpson, who had produced the original film. You would see Eddie Murphy, John Ashton, Judge Reinhold, Ronnie Cox, Paul Reiser, all return to the film. And then you would also have new characters played by Jürgen Prochnow, who played Maxwell Dent. You would also have Carla Fry, Dean Stockwell as Charles Chip Kane, and you'd also have Alan Garfield as Police Chief Harold Lutz. The story was actually written by Eddie Murphy and Robert D. Wachs, and the screenplay was done by Larry Ferguson and Warren Scarron. And Harold Faltermeyer would also come back to do the score. You would also have returning artists such as the Pointer Sisters. You also had George Michael on the soundtrack. Let's see, and of course Bob Seger did the title song, which was Shakedown. Now, I love Beverly Hills Cop 2 just as much as the first movie. It's a much more action-packed movie than the first movie. Tony Scott, obviously, his films are very different looking than Martin Brest's. You have a lot of sunsets, the orange sunsets that he's pretty infamous for in most of his films. The story in Beverly Hills Cop 2, it's been 2 years since the events of the first film, and Taggart, Rosewood, and Foley, and even Bogomil are all friends. They've all kept in touch. They've gone on fishing trips together. They've all stayed in contact. A lot of people didn't like that because Bogomil was so against Foley in the first film, but I've always disagreed with that, because in the first film, yes, they sort of butted heads, but at the end of the movie, they both kind of had a common kind of, they kind of accepted each other, and I felt like, of course, if Taggart and Rosewood stayed friends with Foley, then probably Bogomil would follow, because especially Taggart and Bogomil had joined the force together, so they were close in age and everything, so it made sense to me that they would all be friends. But what happens in this one is that there's all these robberies known as the Alphabet, like the Alphabet Bandit, and these robberies that are happening, and Bogomil starts digging into it to try to unravel who it is and everything, and he gets fired by the new police chief, Harold Lutz, who busts Rosewood and Taggart down to traffic duty. What happens is Bogomil is shot by Dent's henchwoman, Carla Fry, played by Brigitte Nielsen. And Axel, who's back in Detroit, posing as doing some big counterfeiting bust, like it was credit cards. He finds out, and he goes back to Beverly Hills to help investigate who tried to kill Bogomil and unravel the mystery of the Alphabet Bandit. Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing bad I can ever say about this film. It's so much fun. I love this film. When I was a kid and this movie came out, I mean, I rented it, I think, probably 14 times from the warehouse when it came out on tape. But I did see it in the movie theater, and I just had a ball with it. I love the character of Axel Foley. I've always been a huge fan of this character and this movie. I've always, I also, one of the big things for me as a kid was his Detroit Lions jacket. I wanted one so bad because I thought it was so cool. And but yeah, I was just a big fan. I love all the action in this film. It's just such a great film. So yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's easily a 10 out of 10. I love it just as much as the first film. I think it's a great sequel. There were some people that were critical of it, especially critics, said, you know, there's a lot of scenes that are rehash of the original film where it was done, the situation was done better, but I don't give a shit. I've always loved this film, and I still think, like I said about the original, I still think it holds up well today, and I enjoy watching it on numerous occasions, and yeah, it's one of my favorite films. Love this film. On May 25th, 1994, we would see the release of Beverly Hills Cop 3. It would come out 7 years after the last installment in the series. The film stars Eddie Murphy reprising his role as Detective Axel Foley. You'd have Judge Reinhold as Billy Rosewood. You'd have Hector Elizondo as John Flint. You'd have John Saxon as Orrin Sanderson. Timothy Carhart as Ellis DeWald. You'd have Alan Young as Uncle Dave. You have Stephen McHattie as Steve Fulbright. And of course you'd have Bronson Pinchot returning as Surge. The script for the film was done by Stephen E. D'Souza, who had done such action greats as Die Hard, Die Hard 2, and Commando. And the film would be directed by John Landis, who had previously helmed films like American Werewolf in London, Twilight Zone the movie, Animal House, and of course Coming to America. Now, I remember how excited I was that there was going to be a third Beverly Hills Cop film. It took a long time for this film to come out. Like I said, it was 7 years between the second and third film. There were, I think, a couple times where the production was shut down because I think the script changed many times. One of the original plots I heard where the amusement park setting was still part of the plot, or still, you know, it was supposed to be set in the amusement park, but it was supposed to be that the amusement park was taken over by terrorists and Axel and his niece are held hostage in the park. So that was one story, and I thought that was kind of an interesting story idea. But eventually they went with this counterfeiting ring, and at the beginning of the film, Axel's boss is killed by the character Ellis DeWald, and he tracks Ellis back to Beverly Hills and Wonder World, which is kind of like their version of Disneyland. And Axel is sort of, you know, the whole thing is run by, the security is led up by Ellis and Orrin Sanderson, the John Saxon character, and they're doing this counterfeiting ring within the park, and Axel is down there to avenge his boss and, you know, get the bad guys. Beverly Hills Cop 3 is the weakest in the series, and I'm sure I don't need to tell people that. Even though there are problems with the film, I do still enjoy it, but it pales in comparison when you put it against the first two films in the series. I think one thing that was missing from this was that Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer did not produce this, and you can really tell. Another thing that I had a problem with is John Landis. I love John Landis. I think American Werewolf in London is one of the best movies ever made, but he is not an action director. And to follow Tony Scott, and Martin Brest isn't really an action director either, but he did really good action scenes in the first film. And to follow Tony Scott, which had even better action scenes in the second film, with this one, I just thought that everything came off a little bit too cartoonish and almost like Police Academy. There was just a lot of almost like slapstick humor that it was in the other films, but it was just done differently. It wasn't so obvious. I know there's a couple of sort of slapstick moments in the first film where Taggart and Rosewood are trying to get over this wall when they could just walk around, but it's funny, and it's just, there's nothing like this in this film. The other thing that's sorely missing from this film is John Ashton. Hector Elizondo's John Flint character is just uninteresting, and I never really cared for that character. I like Hector Elizondo a lot, but I just don't like him in the film. John Ashton did not reprise his role of Taggart. In a throwaway line, they say that he's retired. That was the other thing I had a problem with. In the second film, it established that Axel and Billy and Taggart are really close friends, and Bogomil. And Bogomil is not even mentioned in this film, so Ronnie Cox not being in this film and John Ashton not being in this film is just, it's just not the same. And they really don't use Rosewood very much in this film. Almost like John Flint's character is almost a bigger character than Rosewood, and I don't understand that. You can tell that, and they even say on the documentary on this DVD that they had a hard time figuring out what the bad guys were doing in the amusement park, and you can tell because it's just sort of kind of a. The other two were just more interesting. The other two plots were a little bit more. They were so much more interesting than this one. There are some great parts to this film. I think Eddie Murphy did a good job coming back as Axel Foley. Of course, without him, I don't think the film would be as successful as it was. But there is something different about the character, and I think, you know, he's not as much of a wise ass as he was in the other two films, and yet he is older. But for all the people that are complaining now that the John McClane character in the Die Hard films changed so much from movie to movie, I actually think that character essence stayed with the character through all 5 Die Hard films. Whereas in this one, although Eddie Murphy did a really good job in it, I just don't feel the sense of fun that he was having with the role like he did in the first 2 films. You can just see that he's almost walking through this film. And I hate that term, but that's what I feel like when I watch it. He just doesn't look like he's having a good time. It was almost like it was a paycheck movie for him, and he knew he was going to get a big payday out of it. And I ain't being critical of somebody that I respect so much and have always admired, but that's what I feel like when I watch this film. When I was a kid, I kind of could look past it, but now I can just see it. When I watch all 3 films, I can just tell that he just does not want to be in this film. And there's only like there's some good action in this film, but like I said, it's cartoonish. The best action scene is when Axel is rescuing the kids on the Ferris wheel spider ride, and I think that scene is really fun and exciting. But everything else in it is just kind of goofy. It's just like John Landis did not know how to direct an action scene at all, and it's really sad that they couldn't have found a better director to do this. The other thing I have a problem with is the music. Harold Faltermeyer didn't return either, and they had Nile Rodgers do the Axel Foley score or Axel Foley theme, and it's horrible. I just don't. It's okay. I mean, I guess horrible is kind of a strong word. It's just not as good. It's not as memorable. They did have some good music by Patti LaBelle, and they had In Excess. So they had some good songs on the soundtrack, but just nothing like the first 2 films. It's just. I don't know. It's just like this film was just kind of thrown together to get it out in the summertime. So yeah, pretty disappointing. I still, like I said, I still like the film, and you know, I do watch it, and you know, I love Eddie Murphy. But yeah, I had a hard time with this film, and you know, if I was going to rate this film, I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, like I said, there's things that I don't like about it, and there's a lot of missing elements that made the first 2 films so great, but I still have fun with it. I still love Axel Foley as a character. I wish he could have retained some of the essence that he had in the first 2 films, but it's still, you know, a film that I love, and I'm glad I have the collection, and yeah, I mean, I still have fun with it. So 7 out of 10. Not the best sequel, and it's sad that they haven't made another film since this one. It's been 19 years since this came out, over 19 years. But yeah, it's still fun to watch, but just not as great as the first 2. So the future for Beverly Hills Cop. So I don't know if many people were aware of this, but Sean Ryan, who had done The Shield, was actually working with Eddie Murphy to do a Beverly Hills Cop TV series. Brandon T. Jackson was supposed to play Axel Foley's son, Aaron Foley. The pilot was actually directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, and Eddie Murphy and Judge Reinhold both were going to be in the film, or in the pilot. So Eddie was going to reprise his role as Axel Foley. He was going to have his son Aaron Foley, who was going to carry on his father's name, and Eddie was going to executive produce it and would occasionally appear in episodes in the series, not being the main character. So the pilot was done, and Judge Reinhold came on board to play Billy Rosewood. I think it was a cameo, but he was in it. And what happened was the show didn't get picked up. I guess they shopped it around to many networks. And from what I heard, the reason why it was never picked up had to do with the fact that the new character of Aaron Foley was not as interesting as Axel Foley. Of course, everybody wants to see Eddie Murphy play his iconic role. So the pilot didn't get picked up, but what happened from that is the buzz that was surrounding that, because people were excited to see Eddie come back as this character after almost 2 decades. So what happened is now Paramount is greenlighting and putting on the fast track a Beverly Hills Cop 4 movie. They have 2 new writers. I forget the names of the guys that are writing it, but they are writing it now. And hopefully, maybe within the next year, we'll see a Beverly Hills Cop 4. I think it would be great for Eddie Murphy, because at this point in his career, he just isn't doing anything. I mean, the last big movie he did was Tower Heist, and he did 1,000 Words, which wasn't a horrible film, but it tanked horribly. I mean, he's had 1,000 Words. He's done, was it Meet Dave? Imagine that. With the exception of the Shrek films, Dreamgirls, and Norbit, he hasn't had a hit in like 8 years. So, it would be... And Tower Heist actually did pretty good, so I'll take it back. He has had Tower Heist, but in terms of... he wasn't the star of that film. He was part of an ensemble. A movie that he is the star of, he hasn't had a hit by himself since Norbit, and that came out in 2007. So I'm really hoping he just does this film to close out the Beverly Hills Cop series. Just do one more film, and I really think it'll be a huge hit, because it's been 20 years almost. I mean, there was only a 12-year gap between the Die Hard 3 and Die Hard 4. So I'm really hopeful that there will be another Beverly Hills Cop, because I don't want Beverly Hills Cop 3 to be the last film in what was a great series until that last chapter. So I hope everybody enjoyed this little breakdown of my thoughts on the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Eddie Murphy. I always have been. Despite some of the movie choices he's made, I've always watched every one of his films in the theaters. I support the actor. I love him. I hope one day he goes on tour again doing stand-up. But if he doesn't, I really just hope that there is another Beverly Hills Cop. I've been waiting 20 years for another Beverly Hills Cop, and I really hope that he makes one. So that's it, and I thank everybody for watching this. Please share your thoughts with me on what you think of the Beverly Hills Cop Beverly Hills Cop movie series. I'd really like to hear everybody's opinion. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Hope everyone has a great evening. Peace.